legacy-wise, I suspect his chalkboard sketches have got to be at the top of the list. He didn't write a lot. He's done some writing, but it wasn't his forte. He left that to his brother. But Stan did a series of chalkboard sketches, and he'd done them more than once. Apparently, the ones I have copies of are ones that he did when I was at the University of Illinois. And I think good old Chuck Harris talked him into producing that chalkboard series one more time, and I think that was the very last time. And this is a good record of that. And what was neat is it just happened to coincide with Pete Walker's arrival at the University of Illinois. Pete was determined to go to Harvard from California, of course, but he wanted to spend a semester at the University of Illinois. And not only, primarily to have overlap with Stan White. He'd heard so much about Stan White from Rich Haig and Hideo Sasaki and others that he was determined to spend that semester. And what was cool was that Stan's sketches were on the board, and Pete Walker was there, and Dick Julin and I were there, Tony Gazzardo, Larry Walquist. Oh man. And we didn't appreciate what we were looking at so much. There was a lesson aspect, but the beauty of the sketches is mind-boggling. But then you start looking at the sketches carefully, and it's a textbook on the practice of landscape architecture, all the way of how you grade to how you come up with planting plans. Stan would be furious if one of us were doing a planting plan and start naming species. He would be furious. He'd say that's not acceptable. He insisted that you study planting with massing. And he had what he called low ground covers, medium ground covers, high trees, shrubs and/or trees, and then canopy. And our drawings had to show those four basic tree types. And then he said, once you've selected your best alternative, and do alternatives, then you can start worrying about what species. And then, of course, probably the most dramatic lesson, and Hideo used it at Harvard for years, and when Hid and I taught at Michigan and Michigan State during the summers, which we did for several years, we used the Stan's basic approach to landscape design. And Stan said, there are only three basic approaches that really make any sense, and if you mix them up too much, it ain't going to work. He said, you either have rectilinear. He said, that's kind of like Mies van der Rohe. You have curvilinear, that's kind of like Burle Marx. Then you have naturalistics, that's kind of like Japanese. And it's kind of like, informal. It's English gardens instead of French gardens. But generally, if you wander too much and mix these up too much, you're not going to be very happy with the way it looks. So he was very insistent that we be very true to one of those three styles. And Hid did the same thing, and it worked very well, I think, as a teaching tool.